Days ago, Time magazine confirmed the one thing that you and I have known since November 4th. The election was stolen. The article didn't use words like steal or stole. They were far more euphemistic. They said fortified, sort of like your breakfast cereal that has extra vitamin C. But in this case, C stands for corruption. Unfortunately, Time doesn't see this new vitamin C as corruption. They see it as being patriotic. It was patriotic corruption. You're not against patriotism, right? Well, there you go. Unfortunately, there's a lot more than just a mere theft of an election. It's a lot bigger than that, much bigger. And in this week's edition of the Shockcast, we also talk about the coming war against you, resource shock, Biden's anti-Semitism, narcissists in your life, conquering pornography, and John MacArthur. Welcome to the Shockcast. I'm John Little, recording on a cool Saturday night, February 13th, 2021, here in southern Taiwan, during Chinese New Year. So, a Shana Tova and a Hag Sameach from all of us in southern Taiwan to wherever you are. Now, if you want to see more of these videos, hit like and click subscribe and whack that little bell. It actually helps. Also, subscribe to The Shock Letter for free at theshockletter.com. You can also find my posts on Facebook and Twitter, and yeah, I'm still tweeting on Twitter, at least as long as they let me. And the links for all of that and more are in the description section below. Most important of all, thank you for praying for this ministry. The world is getting really bad, really fast, and I want to make sure that you understand what is happening so that you can serve the Lord in these last days. Now, tonight we talk about brazen proof of election interference. They are preparing for war with you. The big shock that knocks everything down. America is now anti-Israel. Conquering pornography, dealing with narcissists, and John MacArthur, a corrupt pastor. Brazen proof of election interference. According to the Washington Post, Donald Trump came within 90,000 votes of winning the U.S. election. Not my words, theirs. Here's the article, titled, Republicans Came Within 90,000 Votes of Controlling All of Washington, from the Washington Post. You know, the Jeff Bezos blog. That's not very many votes, just 90,000. And with that handful of votes, this became the flag of the United States of America. Oh, I know. The Stars and Stripes still flies outside of every embassy around the world, but so does the gay pride flag. It was ordered to be flown outside of every American diplomatic mission by the Biden administration. Here's the headline. Antony Blinken orders LGBT flags flown at U.S. embassies, from Breitbart.com. This means that everyone in the world now associates the United States of America with homosexuality. To the rest of the world, sodomy is now a cornerstone of America. The LGBT flag and the U.S. flag are now synonymous in the minds of everyone around the world. Do you want that idea and that flag to symbolize who you are? Well, it only took 90,000 votes to make that image official. That's it. That's all it took. But of course, it's more than that. We now have proof that the election that made the gay pride flag an American icon was also somewhat less than honest and fair. In fact, a better word was stolen. And our proof comes from none other than Time magazine. And the article was titled, The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election. And yeah, it really is that melodramatic. Yes, that's right. They saved the 2020 election by stealing it. They are so pleased with their efforts and so proud of what they did that they just had to tell us all about it. And since they know that the Biden administration won't prosecute them for their efforts, why not crow about it? As Lionel of Lionel Media says, they stole it fair and square. And Breitbart has a pretty good take on the Time article. Their article is titled Time Magazine, quote-unquote secret, quote-unquote well-funded cabal worked to protect 2020 election. Lots of quotes in that title. In fact, I actually recommend reading that Breitbart article instead of the nauseating original one in Time Magazine. There is literally no need to waste your time with the positive spin that Time's Molly Ball puts on that theft of your government. But don't stop with what Breitbart says. Look at what a stunningly cogent legal expert says.
Viva Fry, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, and by popular demand, my emails, DMs, messaging has been blowing up. People are asking me to do a vlog on this Time article, which details quite literally how shadow entities affected the outcome of the 2020 election. And in case you think I'm exaggerating, let me just read the headline of the article. The secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. Now, some of you out there might be saying, Viva, your bias is showing. This headline didn't mention anything about affecting the outcome of the 2020 election. It only said that it saved the 2020 election. To which I would respond that this is merely a game of semantics. It is a distinction without a difference. The headline literally admits that shadow entities saved the 2020 election, and saving an election is necessarily affecting its outcome. You may reassure yourself that it is only affecting the outcome for the good, for the proper. Okay, I might even grant that, but it is necessarily admitting in the headline that shadow entities affected the outcome of the 2020 election. But let's not quibble over the semantics of the headline. Let's just read one paragraph from this article, which I think summarizes the entire article before dissecting the article itself. That's why the participants want the secret history of the 2020 election told, even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream. A well-funded cabal of powerful people, ranging across industries and ideologies, working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. They were not rigging the election, they were fortifying it. And they believe the public needs to understand the system's fragility in order to ensure that democracy in America endures. There is one meme and one meme only that is applicable to what I just read. What? What the f?
That clip was from a video titled The Times Elections Expose is Stunning, Viva Fry Vlog. 40 years ago, and yes, I distinctly remember what was going on in 1981, you would never have thought that such a thing like this would have been possible. It just would not have been conceivable to the average person. Now it's like, well, nothing out of the ordinary, business as usual. Wait, when did America become Plunkett of Tammany Hall? If you are confused by that reference, you might have missed my article in November that gave you a special reading assignment. Yes, if you read or listen to a Megashock, you get homework. Here's that reading exercise again, and it's titled Plunkett of Tammany Hall, a series of very plain talks on very practical politics. And you have the link in the downloads in the description section below. Plunkett called it honest graft. I call it evil beyond belief, but then again, I was raised in Indiana. We weren't as corrupt as them New Yorkers. But unfortunately, this was more than just graft, also known as unscrupulous use of a politician's authority for personal gain. No, this was more along the lines of treason, insurrection, sedition, and subversion, and there's a criminal code that lays out the penalties for such crimes. And that criminal code is 18 U.S.C. Chapter 115, titled Treason, Sedition, and Subversive Activities. And you can find it on uscode.house.gov. It's there. Here's how U.S. federal law describes insurrection. Whoever incites, sets on foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or the laws thereof, or gives aid or comfort thereto, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both, and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. But wait, The next section provides a better description of what happened, but this one is called Sedition. If two or more persons in any state or territory in any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States conspire to overthrow, put down, or destroy by force the government of the United States, or to levy war against them, or to oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States by force, or by force to seize, take, or possess any property of the United States contrary to the authority thereof. Oh, but it gets better. Here's the next one. Advocating overthrow of government. Whoever knowingly or willfully advocates, abets, or advises, or teaches the utility, the duty, necessity, desirability, or propriety of overthrowing or destroying the government of the United States, or the government of any state, territory, district, or possession thereof, or the government of any political division therein, by force or violence, or by the assassination of any officer of any such government, or whoever, with the intent to cause the overthrow or destruction of any such government, prints, publishes, edits, issues, circulates, sells, distributes, or publicly displays any written or printed matter advocating, advising, or teaching the duty, necessity, desirability, or propriety of overthrowing or destroying any government of the United States by force or violence, or attempts to do so, or whoever organizes or helps or attempts to organize any society, group, or assembly of persons who teach, advocate, or encourage the overthrow or destruction of any such government by force or violence, or becomes or is a member of or affiliates with any such society, group, or assembly of persons knowing the purposes thereof. So, under 18 U.S.C. Chapter 115, the men and women who conspire to overthrow the 2020 election appear to be guilty of either insurrection, sedition, or advocating the overthrow of government. Since I'm not a lawyer, I have to say appear, but it should be pretty clear to a reasonable person that the spirit of the law, and even the fact of the law, has been violated. Badly. In fact, so bad that it takes my breath away. It's beyond amazing, but it gets worse. This will be forever. Take a look at this report by Michael Snyder, titled, "A Terrifying New Bill in Congress Would Eliminate the Possibility of Turning America Around in 2024, 2028, or Ever Again." That's right, the theft of the 2020 election will be repeated over and over and over again. Think of a nice big boot stomping you in the face forever. Oh, and here's another look at this from the Gatestone Institute. If you thought the 2020 elections were chaotic, just wait. From gatestoneinstitute.com, gatestoneinstitute.org. Now, stop for a moment and ask yourself a question. Why aren't the Republicans up in arms about this? I mean, this is public knowledge. It's not conspiracy theory, it's conspiracy fact. It was published in Time magazine. But hardly anyone outside of a few people are saying anything about this, let alone doing anything. In fact, most Republican politicians aren't just doing nothing, they're giving their support to this overthrow of the United States of America. Make no mistake, both the Republicans and the Democrats are conspiring together on this. It's bipartisan corruption. I saw some of that corruption in the upper echelons of the Republican Party back in the late 80s. I was a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed graduate student and a provisional member of the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR. And yes, I was a member of the CFR, while the mainstream media was claiming that it didn't exist, that it was a conspiracy theory. Now, calm down. My membership in the CFR was only provisional, temporary, just 1 year. No blood oaths, no secret ceremony, no pledging allegiance to Satan. Anyway, the Republican Party of Indiana liked to bring in people like me to observe how they operated. I got to watch them just as they watched me. So I had a chance to be in planning meetings at the highest levels in the Indiana GOP. Those guys were unbelievably corrupt in the late 80s. They are worse now. And all of this is why the following article is distressingly true. Americans seem to be the most united around the belief that civil war is coming. From notthebee.com. That's a report of a new poll from Zogby showing that 46% of Americans believe another civil war is inevitable. Let that sink in. Almost half of Americans believe that a civil war is coming. And it's as if the left actually wants this. Their increasingly shrill calls to destroy their opposition are splitting America right down the middle. And the one person who has a better handle on this coming civil war is Martin Armstrong. Martin's artificial intelligence algorithm called Socrates has been warning for years that America will split apart. Armstrong calls his artificial intelligence Socrates, and it has been spot on in every prediction that it has made. Here are the last two paragraphs of a recent post on ArmstrongEconomics.com. Quote, "The patriots are no longer in Washington. They are the enemy from Washington's perspective. Unfortunately, the computer, Socrates, will be right to my disappointment. The USA will break up and will never be the land of freedom ever again. What these people are doing is tearing down every piece of fabric that once made the United States the land of opportunity and the beacon of liberty in the world. You may think that what we are going through is unique. History repeats because the corruption in government always unfolds." And that's from Martin Armstrong's article, Just Say No, on ArmstrongEconomics.com. This heartbreaking and almost unbelievable fracture of America will be terrible beyond belief. It will unleash the dogs of war. It will destroy commerce networks and global trade. It will upend the financial system, and it's inevitable because this is not about freedom or personal liberty. If you thought that this was about democracy and self-determination, think again. No, really. Stop and think about all the arguments that you've had with leftist friends, leftist family, and leftist neighbors. Did facts matter? No, of course not. Why? Because your leftist acquaintances are spouting a religion. To them, this is about faith, not fact. Seriously, pay attention to what the left is actually saying. When you disagree with them, you are disagreeing with the most basic tenets of their faith. Logic and fact have nothing to do with this. It's faith. Their faith, pure and simple. It's their secular religion versus your faith in Christ. That's why this civil war that's coming is inevitable, because it's a religious war. And religious wars are always, always awful. Next, they are preparing for war with you. The problem is that the deep state already knows that this war is coming, and they intend to win. And we saw evidence of this in this video.
This past week, some crazy things happened that just made me think I'm living in communist China, with the Great Firewall of China around me. Who would ever think that this sort of thing would happen in America? The Great Firewall of America. Apparently, we're just as easily controlled and no one says a word but me. In this video, I'll tell you about the specifics of what happened last week where parts of the internet's encrypted traffic were throttled by parties unknown. Though there aren't many parties to choose from. I'll give you a list later on since it has to be someone on the short list. Exactly what the motive is or why they stopped doing it is the cause for a lot of speculation. Was there a secret executive order? Was this just done for business economic reasons? Or is this at the behest of the Five Eyes three-letter agencies? And some of the potential reasons are plenty scary. This is a war on privacy, folks, because the ISPs and backbone providers that did the throttling specifically targeted those people who are trying to protect themselves using encryption and IP address obfuscation services like VPNs. It's an outrageous act and left me with a bad taste of what can happen in America. This already happens in other countries, but here? Anyway, let's talk about this in detail, including the specifics of the event and why they may have done this.
That's a clip from the video, The Great Firewall of America. What the Zuck? He has his own way of doing things. Anyway, the blocking of virtual private networks on the U.S. internet backbone could only happen at the request of the American government. You would not be able to get AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, Lumen, also known as CenturyLink, GTT, or Cogent to coordinate like this unless the U.S. government was behind it. This was coordinated, and no one is talking about it. Part of the reason why no one is talking about it is because the U.S. government is being very careful. It was brute force at first, but now they're running their blocks at certain times in certain ways. And they seem to be selective about their blocks. It's almost as if they are testing their abilities while gathering information on who is using a virtual private network or VPN. The other possible reasons for why this isn't being talked about is because, well, VPN providers probably don't want to advertise the fact that they can be blocked. And some VPN companies might already have implemented port hopping into their software. So don't expect a lot of news about this. The main thing to understand is that it's happening and that it's directed at you. Biden started this. Don't forget that. Oh, and to prove that point, there's something else to understand. Notice when these attacks began, just after the inauguration of Joe Biden. Call that just a coincidence if you want, but I don't think that it is. No, scratch that. There's no way that this is just a coincidence, but there's more. Let's remind ourselves of all those fusion centers that George Bush Jr. set up. And I actually had a reminder of that in an article titled Big Brother is Spying on You in Thousands of Ways, and all of that info now goes into centralized fusion systems on endoftheamericandream.com. I don't know how many more wake-up calls that you're going to get. Hopefully, there will be more warnings that will help to convince you of the danger of your position. We are all in trouble, all of us. The good news is that we have God, and they don't. So please take this time to strengthen your faith. God said that if you hold him close, he will be with you. In fact, James has a great verse on this subject, quote, "Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded." Close quote, James 4:8. Will you do that? Next, the big shock that knocks everything down. From the very first post on a mega shock in August of 2011, I have been warning about the coming resource shock. Most people have ignored that warning, and I understand why. The human mind just isn't well adapted to mathematical thinking. Grasping exponential functions is almost impossible unless you've been immersed in it and even cooked a bit by it. Sort of like a marinade, like when you make coq au vin. And yes, I kind of feel like a chicken that has been simmering in the pot for way too long. But now is your chance to have your own goose a little overcooked. What was it that ultimately brought on the Great Recession in 2008? Oil. Yeah, I know that there were other inputs. I know all about the mismanagement that played a key role. I get all that, but it does not change the key fact that the price of energy killed the economy. And it's about to happen again. Our best estimate right now is that the price of oil will go up this summer. In fact, unfortunately, it's going up right now. In fact, I just saw this on Zero Hedge titled, "Oil is Soaring Amid Supercycle Chatter" from zerohedge.com. You had better hope that this supercycle chatter goes away and the oil price drops. A soaring price of oil is not a good thing right now. But at the same time, we should expect the price of oil to rise whenever the economy begins to return to normal. Under normal conditions, an increase in the price of oil would be a good sign of a rising economy. But unfortunately, these are not normal conditions. Since we are now on the downslope of the peak oil curve, every time our global economy starts to recover, the price of oil will go sky high. And that high oil price will kill each and every economic recovery for at least the next 50 years until everything bottoms out. Every single recovery for a very long time. It will be a financial bloodbath for everyone who doesn't own productive oil assets. The interesting thing is that it won't be just oil that goes up. It will be commodities in general. Oil is the most important, but iron, copper, zinc, and rare earth metals will also go up, especially since it takes oil to mine them. Here's the article that has me concerned. It's titled, Kolonovich, a new commodity super cycle has begun, again on zerohedge.com. If we weren't already post-peak in global oil reserves, I would be less concerned. Commodity supercycles happen all the time, but now that we are way past the peak of peak oil, this next supercycle will be bad. Very bad. The last commodity supercycle brought on the Great Recession. This supercycle will bring in something far, far worse. I truly hope that what is coming will not be as bad as I think. I would like to think that this supercycle won't be the one that kills us. But I don't believe that we have the luxury of optimism. Again, you don't need to be afraid, but you do need to prepare. Next, America is now anti-Israel. The Democrats have always been anti-Israel, especially Democrat presidents. I know that there are people who claim exceptions to that rule, but those are aberrations at best. Carter was against Israel, Clinton was against Israel, Obama was against Israel. Unfortunately, both Bushes were also against Israel too, so it's not just a Democrat thing. Trump was the only one to really do his best to help Israel. In fact, I'm not sure who has done more. Reagan wasn't all that friendly, Johnson was terrible, and I don't think Kennedy was a friend. Nixon helped save Israel's bacon in 1973, but his administration helped create the Yom Kippur War in the first place. And I don't know how Eisenhower fit in all of this. But Biden? Oh, it's clear about whether Biden is a friend or foe of Israel. He's definitely one of Israel's worst enemies. And he might even be the biggest anti-Semite-in-chief since Johnson. It would be hard to be worse than LBJ, but Biden seems to be working on it. In fact, Biden signaled his enmity towards Israel with one of his first appointments. This guy. That is Palestinian-American Maher Bitar. If you wanted to signal your hatred for Israel, you appoint this guy to a key intelligence position. And that is exactly what Joe Biden did on his first day in office. And we saw that in an article from IsraelHayom.com. Biden appoints Palestinian American to key intelligence role. I don't think that there is anyone who hates Israel more than Maher Bitar. And Biden gave him this job. It's titled Senior Director for Intelligence Programs at the National Security Council. And again, Joe Biden wasn't even a single day in office when he appointed Bitar. Biden was sworn in on the 20th of January, and by the morning of the next day, Maher Bitar was on the National Security Council staff. This is horrifying. And it means that America is a big step towards judgment. Biden is signaling to everyone that he considers Israel to be the enemy, and that means war in the Middle East and terrible harm to Israel. Israelis will die because of this, and you can trust that Biden will do his very best to disarm and destroy the Jewish state. And I've got more of these articles in my main article, such as more links in the main article, such as Biden puts anti-Israel BDS activists in charge of NSC Intel. Kana, Biden will radically reset relations with Israel. They'll have to recognize Palestinian statehood. White House can't explain why Biden hasn't called Netanyahu. U.S. foreign policy shifts away from Mideast. Paris urges new Iran nuclear deal. ICC to probe Israeli war crimes. Hamas rocket fire coherent with international law. Video, Kana, Biden will radically reset relations with Israel. They'll have to recognize, again, the Palestinian state. And that's also from Breitbart. We aren't even a month into the Biden administration, and the damage being done is amazing. I started to think about how much worse it will get. Next, conquering pornography. The judgment of God is coming, and he will send his wrath upon the world for these reasons: idolatry, murder, illicit drugs, theft, sexual immorality. Unfortunately, the wrath and judgment of God will come upon Christians before it comes upon the rest of the world. Here is what Peter says, quote, "For it is time for judgment to begin at the household of God, and if it begins with us, what will be the outcome of those who do not obey the gospel of God?" Close quote, 1 Peter 4:17 ESV. But I know what you're about to say. You aren't stealing, you aren't doing illicit drugs, you haven't murdered anyone, although I'm sorry, but abortion is murder, and you probably don't worship idols. But what about sexual immorality or fornication? If you are watching pornography, you are engaging in sexual immorality, and half of all pastors in America are doing that on a regular basis. That's right, half. And you can bet that more than half of all Christian men are doing porn. In fact, let me look up the statistics. Yep, I was right. In fact, it's worse than I thought. The figure is 68%. That's right, almost 70% of all Christian men are watching pornography on a regular basis. You can find that in an article titled "Pornography and Christians" from BaptistMessenger.com. If you are among that 68%, you are toast if you don't repent right now. And no, I don't mean feeling sorry and trying to stop doing it. I mean stop it right now. If God will destroy the world because of pornography, what do you think that he will do to you? Yeah, he's going to kill you. Then after he takes your life, you will spend eternity deeply regretting that you spent time watching pornography. And I'm being optimistic here when I say that you'll suffer eternal regret. No, it will probably be worse than that. Here's what Jesus said, quote, "And if your eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life without one eye than with two eyes to be thrown into the hell of fire." Close quote. Matthew 18:9 ESV. If you watch pornography, there's a really good chance, even certainty, that you get to spend all of eternity in the lake of fire. That's right. You go to hell forever. Are you paying attention now? You can stop watching pornography right now if you really want to. Don't tell me that you can't, because I know that you can. And the only reason that you haven't is that you don't really believe that God will judge you for your sin. Do you think that I'm any different than you? I'm as red-blooded as almost any man can be. I've got a string of macho experiences to prove it. If you want to get into a contest over who has more testosterone-fueled virility, go ahead. I bet that I have most of you wussies beat. The only difference between me and those of you watching porn is that I'm afraid of God. That's right, afraid. And if you aren't, you're a fool. Yes, I love God with all of my heart. It's why I'm a Christian. But I fear God with every fiber of my being. Let me put it this way. Love draws us to God. Fear pushes us from sin. If you can't figure that out, you have a serious eternal problem on your hands. If you won't fear God, then you need to get ready to spend an eternity in hell. And you don't get a third choice. So the fear of God is the beginning point of any struggle against pornography or any other sin in your life. And while you work on that, watch this video that I saw a few days ago.
Let the children go! Is pornography morally wrong?
No, I don't think it's wrong.
When did you last look at pornography?
Oh, actually, last night about 11:30. It's not lust because you know what? That brings me closer to my woman that I could do things.
I'm sure it does.
My mom was Christian, my dad was Catholic.
And you became a porn star.
And I became a porn star.
Sexual immorality. It's a big problem, isn't it? It's bigger than ever. And in fact, it's bigger than we can even begin to imagine.
So rape is not objectively wrong?
Nope.
Murder is not objectively wrong?
Nope.
Sex trafficking is not objectively wrong?
Nope.
Do you think pornography is okay?
It's the sport. I love it.
Do you say it's a sport?
It's the sport of fishing.
The consequences for it are beyond horrific because the Bible teaches us that fornicators and adulterers will not inherit the kingdom of God. In the book of Revelation, we're told that the sexually immoral will have their part in the lake of fire. But you know what's even scarier than that? It's the fact that Jesus said that adultery and fornication can go beyond the physical because we can commit sexual immorality by lusting in our hearts. And so today we're going to be talking about lust, and we're going to explore another area that many people don't want to talk about because unfortunately many are entangled in it. Today we're going to explore the subject of pornography. Pornography hasn't just destroyed individuals, it hasn't just destroyed families, it hasn't just destroyed society, but it's also been a destructive element in the lives of Christians. And the question is there hope? I'm happy to say that there is, and today we're going to explore 6 ways that you can have victory over pornography. And for the non-Christian, there's hope for you as well, because the gospel of Jesus Christ can set you free from addiction to pornography, give you forgiveness of sin, and grant you the hope of everlasting life.
That's a clip from 6 Ways to Conquer Porn on YouTube. It would be better to die than to keep watching porn. I'm serious, and you should be too. Next, dealing with narcissists. I've spent so much of my life dealing with narcissists that you would think that I was an expert, but it seems that I'm often unable to identify a narcissist until well after the fact. In one particular case, decades after the fact. Part of the problem lies in the fact that we are all, at a minimum, a little narcissist. We all have the tendency to put our welfare first. We all have that urge to protect ourselves from criticism. We all crave positive feedback. We all want to feel safe around the people we love. So a lot of this is natural. But then there are the toxic people in our lives who lie, cheat, steal, and manipulate. They hide who they are behind veil after veil of fake goodwill and false modesty. They'll be self-deprecating while they fish for ways to capture your loyalty. Or maybe they're more open about their attempts to grab all the credit while they rub your face in the dirt. There are a lot of facets to what it means to be a narcissist. Pride, fear, greed, dishonesty, treachery, duplicity, infidelity, and on and on. So it's hard to lump all narcissists under a single stereotype. Except for one thing. They always hide. That seems to be the one thing that is common to all the narcissists that I've ever dealt with. They all hide who they are. None of them are genuine, every one of them is fake, and they can never, ever let you close to who they actually are. If you were ever stabbed in the back by someone who you thought of as a close friend, she was probably a narcissist. If you've ever had a relationship with someone who always wanted you to feel just an inch tall, you had a narcissist on your hands. If you've ever had someone cut you off in traffic and then give you the finger, that's another narcissist. And the suffering that they cause is truly terrible. I have never been hurt more at the hands of anyone, more than at the hands of a narcissist. And I can tell you that from personal experience that the narcissists who call themselves Christians are the worst narcissists of all. Is it even possible to be saved and a narcissist at the same time? It's hard for me to believe that. You can be a true Christian and a narcissist, but I'm not the one who decides that. I leave that in the hands of God where it belongs. Anyway, here are a couple of videos that I discovered that you might find useful.
I want to talk with you today about a topic that can be very difficult to figure out simply because of the subtleties and the hidden elements that are in this topic, and that is the covert narcissist who's also a master gaslighter. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken with people who will say, well, it was only after a considerable amount of time that I realized this person I was dealing with was a narcissist. And that's because covert narcissists don't necessarily show themselves to be that right away. Now, let's keep in mind that narcissism in general is identified by the need to be in control, real strong control needs, low levels of empathy, lots of exploitive, manipulative behavior. They operate with an alternate reality, meaning we do things my way and I don't care what everybody else says. They want to be superior. And when you have that grandiose, open narcissist, they don't leave a whole lot to the imagination. But the covert narcissist is known for their lack of grandiosity. They're not showy necessarily, and they have that look at me kind of mentality. Sometimes they can come off as mellow or just kind of blending into the pack. They may be a little bit shy, or they just may seem to be, at first glance, kind of pleasant and friendly and all the rest. But over time, you realize there's something insidious that's going on that keeps repeating itself. And then when we talk about gaslighting, we're talking about the tendency to try to create confusion in the other individual. So the covert narcissist wants you to feel confused about your truth and your perceptions. And so it's their way of trying to keep an edge over you.
That one is the clip from Covert Narcissist, the Ultimate Gaslighters. Again, a YouTube video. And this next one is...
Now, let's switch this over to you as you deal with the narcissist in your life. When that person has all of this emotion and confusion and agitation that they bring to you, are you able to respond with calm confidence? You see, narcissists are game players. They're con artists, they're manipulators, and they want to do anything and everything to pull you off of your game and get you into their game, which is the game of confusion. And one of the things that would ruin their goals for you is calm confidence. But that's not as easily said or easily done as it is to say. You know, they come at you with all sorts of tactics to try to get you confused and tense and agitated. For example, they can create arguments with you over minutia. They constantly find fault with you if you don't conform to whatever it is their schemes require. They can be non-cooperative regarding matters that might be important to you. And as these things happen, your emotions can start coming up and you start having this anxiety or tension or agitation when they learn details about you rather than thinking, well, now I know you better. Their thinking is, now I can manipulate you better. That's how they operate. Or they can whittle away when you begin to show resolve. It's like, oh no, there's always something wrong with that. And they'll remind you over and over and over. Lots of criticism, lots of cynicism. They can mock your character. You know, why would anybody paying attention to someone like you? Or you're just such a screw up anyway. They might try to isolate you from people who would be supportive. They can set up situations for you to get angry. And then when you do feel angry, they blame you for having the emotion. I mean, that's what I mean when I say they're game players. And the more you react with all of the troubled and strained and difficult emotion, the game continues.
One trait that keeps you out of the narcissist games. That's just a clip from the main video. And it's also on YouTube. Again, we all have a tendency towards narcissism, so we need to be on our guard to keep that out of our lives. And if you find a narcissist in your life, there are things that you can do to keep yourself from suffering more than necessary. Just remember that claiming to be a Christian doesn't make you a follower of Christ. Always look at the fruit of a person's life before accepting their claims. Quote, "Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them." Close quote. Matthew 7:20, the KJV. Next, John MacArthur, a corrupt pastor. After as much as I have disagreed with John MacArthur, I never thought of him as corrupt. I always thought that he was at least moral, upright, and above reproach. But it seems that I was wrong. Watch this video that gives evidence and decide for yourself.
Welcome, my name is Joshua, and that is one of John MacArthur's 3 sprawling homes. You heard that right, 3. And I'm willing to bet you don't have a tennis court on yours. Mr. Anti-Prosperity himself appears to be living the lavish millionaire lifestyle of your run-of-the-mill prosperity preacher, and to a degree even more opulent than some of the worst. Indeed, if you do a little bit of cursory research, John MacArthur's net worth far exceeds some notable names. Some estimates are hovering right around the $14 million mark, which for many people is not a surprise. It's not a surprise. And in a recent article, a well-researched and excellent article, I'll add, by Julie Roys, entitled "The Prosperous Lifestyle of America's Anti-Prosperity Gospel Preacher," is laid out in exquisite detail the shameful opulence, corruption, kickbacks, nepotism, etc. behind John MacArthur, Grace Community Church, the Masters University and Seminary, and all related branches of his empire. There's a lot to cover here, and primarily we're going to be going through Julie's article, but I want to start with some scripture. We will orient ourselves with God's Word, the only rule of faith and practice, in Luke chapter 15. Luke chapter 15, Jesus speaking, beginning in verse 13, says this: "No servant can serve 2 masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon," or money. Now the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, also heard these things, and they derided him. And he said to them, "You are those who justify yourselves before men, but God knows your hearts. For what is highly esteemed among men is an abomination in the sight of God." What is highly esteemed among men is an abomination in the sight of God.
That's a couple minutes clip of a much longer video titled "John MacArthur's Millionaire Lifestyle Exposed" on YouTube. Now, I don't mind if a pastor makes a lot of money as long as money doesn't become the object of his life. Unfortunately, I don't know of any rich pastors that are immune to covetousness. So if a pastor has a lot of money, there's probably a lot of problems with that pastor. Eternal problems. And I think that John MacArthur has a very uncertain eternity ahead of him. It is clear from this video and the article that it is based on that John MacArthur is guilty of very corrupt decisions. The fact that he lives like a billionaire means nothing. The fact that he is corrupt is everything. And it is very distressing to see this. That's it for this Shotcast. Again, hit like, click subscribe, and whack that little bell. And please share this video or the MP3 below. After you have done all that, leave a comment. I like seeing what you have to say about what was said here. Your input is welcome. Then help keep Omega Shock and the Shotcast alive. There's a link below that can help you do that. I am truly grateful for all of you who have helped this ministry continue. I could not do this without you. May God bless you for your generosity. Also, subscribe to the Shock Letter at theshockletter.com and read my books for free, When Jacob Returns and Ezekiel's Fire. You do not want to get caught by what is coming.